Hello, BookTube. I want to resume my read along of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, with a little bit of recap and a little bit of an explanation for why it's been so long. The one will explain the other, I believe. The recap will go in very general terms here because I'm assuming that most of you have a familiarity with the book. Uh, Goes a little like this. Uh, uh, a ring of immense evil power that had been crafted by the Dark Lord Sauron a long age of Middle Earth ago has come to light, and it has fallen into the possession of a creature named Smeagol, who hoards it and keeps it to himself, and it lengthens his life enormously and deranges his mind. And eventually, it comes into the possession of a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins, whose life is also lengthened by it and who doesn't quite turn evil, but uh, starts to feel worn, like butter spread over too much toast. uh, and he makes a journey to Rivendell, the citadel of the elves in Middle Earth, and soon after he bequeaths the ring to his cousin Frodo, and soon after, Frodo and his friends Sam and Merry and Pippin, three other hobbits, arrive at Rivendell, where they meet with a group of people, a proud warrior man from the kingdom of Gondor named Boromir. They've already met on the road Aragorn, son of Arathorn, who is, unbeknownst to them until recently, the rightful king of the western kingdoms of Middle Earth, in a long line that's been unbroken since the days when Sauron first lost his ring. The wizard Gandalf, the dwarf Gimli, the elf Legolas, and after consultation at Rivendell, it's decided that a fellowship of these people will set out for Mount Doom in Sauron's kingdom of Mordor, there to throw the ring into the fire from which it was made and destroy it, thereby removing the evil of it from Middle Earth forever. Um, as Tolkien tells the Fellowship of the Ring, we watch the Fellowship set out. We watch their enormous setbacks. We see Gandalf fall into a pit, seemingly dead. We watch our characters make their way to Lothlorien, another citadel of the elves in Middle Earth, and then leave there, and they meet with catastrophe, and it splits them up. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are split up from Sam and Frodo, who decide to go to Mordor on their own, without the Fellowship. And Merry and Pippin are captured by a large band of orcs, and it's to save their lives that Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas go. Now, the name I'm not mentioning here is Boromir, and that's because in a climactic moment, when Boromir has Frodo alone, he makes an impassioned case that he should take the ring and use it. Now, of course, in his mind, he's thinking he'll use it for good, but we know better, and so does Frodo. So he flees, puts the ring on, which turns him invisible, and flees from Boromir, who immediately comes to his senses and hates what he's done, and is then, very shortly afterwards killed by a bunch of orcs while trying to save the life of Merry and Pippin. Merry and Pippin are taken anyway, and their three friends decide to chase them, and that is the end of the first book, and a little bit of the beginning of The Two Towers is that split. So we have two narratives all of a sudden instead of one. We have Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli chasing the band of orcs that has captured Merry and Pippin, overtaking the group of the riders of Rohan who have dealt with the band of orcs, and eventually encountering the resurrected Gandalf, now Gandalf the White, and deciding that they will band together and go to war. That they will go to the kingdoms of the West and assemble an army to assault Mordor. There's that plot. And then the other plot is Sam and Frodo in a boat and then on foot, simply going to Mordor. Now, very soon after they start out, they are joined by Smeagol, who is now Gollum, this desiccated, horrible creature who's drawn to the ring and who's not to be trusted. So that is the recap, and that is also something of the excuse for why the read-along stopped. It mimics what has always been my reading experience with Lord of the Rings, which is that gamble doesn't work. J.R.R. Tolkien takes an enormous gamble with this overarching narrative of his. He has two different stories to tell, and he decides to tell them separately. Assuming, or maybe working really hard in the best tradition of a hardworking writer, that he can make both of them equally exciting, equally interesting to the reader. And for this reader, anyway, that has never been true. Never. Even from my first time reading it, I am presented with, on the one hand, Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, elves, all the high chieftains of Middle-earth, fighting the last battle of their lives against the greatest evil in the world. And on the other hand, three little beings walking day after day after day and stopping every once in a while to have supper of potatoes and maybe a pigeon or a stewed rabbit. And I know what Tolkien's trying to do in those Hobbit sequences, those vast, unending Hobbit chapters. He's trying to make the real what's at stake. He tries to bring you right up to it. He tries to make you vitally aware of the fact that it isn't the grand battles of kingdoms that is at stake here, and it's not the grand battles of kingdoms that will decide the fate of Middle-earth. Now, he's had Gandalf say that many times, but in this setup, this split narrative, he gets to demonstrate it by having these little hands, these non-martial, non-capable creatures. A single band of orcs could kill them all. By having them march straight into the heart of danger, simply trusting that they can make their way and make it work. Now, it's supposed to show their simple heroism, and it does. The more I read those Hobbit chapters as the years go by, the more I like them, but it's a very incremental process. It's very incremental, which is why the last Two Towers Together read-along that we did was the first chunk of the Two Towers, which is the story of Gandalf and Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli and the Ents and Saruman, and then it stops, and then reading stopped as well, because everything that comes after that in this book is Frodo and Sam and Gollum in the wilderness. It climaxes towards the end of the book when they encounter the giant monster spider Shelob. That's not much of a climax. You have to wait a long time to get to it. But I was rereading it this time for this read-along, and I did find things that I liked that I wanted to mention to you. At one point, for instance, it's a famous scene. The three of them, Gollum, Sam, and Frodo, are crossing a marsh, a dead marsh, and when Sam falls and his hands in the mud and looks in the water, he sees faces looking back up at him. There are faces under the water, dead faces, but still somehow watching. And when Sam asks, "Who are they? What are they?" "I don't know," said Frodo in a dreamlike voice, "but I have seen them too, in the pools when the candles were lit. They lie in all the pools, pale faces deep, deep under the dark water. I saw them, grim faces and evil, noble faces and sad. Many faces proud and fair, and weeds in their silver hair, but all foul, all rotting, all dead. A fell light is in them." Frodo hid his eyes in his hands. "I know not who they are, but I thought I saw men and elves and orcs beside them." "Yes, yes," said Gollum. "All dead, all rotten, elves and orcs and men, the dead marshes. There was a great battle long ago, yes. So they told him when Smeagol was young, when I was young before the Precious came. It was a great battle, tall men with long swords and terrible elves and orcs shrieking. They fought on the plain for days and months at the Black Gates, but the marshes have grown since then. swallowed up the graves, always creeping, creeping. That's well done. And later on, the three of them encounter a group of soldiers from Rohan, and from Minas Tirith rather, and one of them, the leader of the group, is a young man named Faramir, who it turns out is the brother of Boromir, and in the earlier section of the Two Towers, Gandalf has made it clear that the steward of Gondor is not a normal man. The blood of Westernesse runs strong in the whole family and the whole line of Gondor, and it makes for fell, powerful men who have great mental ability, almost telepathy, when they turn their mind to it. Not to be trifled with. Strong-willed, strong, powerful, old-world men whose line is largely unbroken, whose blood is largely undiluted. The worry that they have about Aragorn is that his blood is. And we don't see that in Boromir at all. We see the bravery of Minas Tirith in Boromir, but we don't see any of when we eventually meet his father. His father is nothing like Boromir. His father is more like Gandalf. And when we meet Faramir, without drawing any attention to it at all, Tolkien does a very good job of showing us that Faramir is actually a lot more like his father than Boromir ever was, even though his father preferred Boromir. And he's talking with Frodo, who has told him nothing. At one point, he says, "You are not wholly frank with me, Frodo." And Frodo says, "I told no lies, and of the truth all I could." And Faramir says, "I do not blame you. You spoke with skill in a hard place, and wisely, it seemed to me. But I learned or guessed more from you than your words said. You were not friendly with Boromir, or you did not part in friendship. You, and Master Samwise too, I guess, have some grievance. Now I loved him dearly, and I would gladly avenge his death, yet I knew him well. Isildur's bane," that's the ring. "I would hazard that Isildur's bane lay between you and was the cause of contention in your company. Clearly it is a mighty heirloom of some sort, and such things do not breed peace among confederates, nor not if aught may be learned from ancient tales. Do I not hit near the mark?" Now, the question is slightly tongue-in-cheek, because that's uncanny that he would learn all of that just by digging deep into what he can see of Frodo's mind. "Near," said Frodo, "but not in the gold. There was no contention in our company, though there was doubt which we should have taken from Immen Muel, which is the place where it all happened. But be that as it may, ancient tales teach us also the peril of rash words concerning such things as heirlooms." "Ah, then it is as I thought." This is Faramir responding. "Your trouble was with Boromir alone. He wished this thing brought to Minas Tirith. Alas, it is a crooked fate that seals your lips who saw him last, and holds from me that which I long to know, what was in his heart and thought in his latest hours. Whether he erred or no, of this I am sure, he died well, achieving some good thing. His face was more beautiful than ever in life." I liked that the first few times I read it, but I loved it this time around. His face was more beautiful than ever in life, reminding us that Faramir has seen his brother's body and has been able to discern all of that, even just by knowing Frodo's mind and the weakness of his brother. It's a wonderful scene. It ends too quick. I once again, in this section of the book, I really, really wished that we could just sort of say goodbye to Frodo and Sam and stick with Faramir. but anyway, sorry for the abbreviated return to this. We're going to go on from here, but that is it, believe it or not, for the Two Towers together. I spent a lot of time on the first part of the book. The second part of the book is that. It's Sam and Frodo and Gollum wandering closer and closer to Mount Doom. They meet with danger, they meet with Shelob, but it's just hobbity adventures. It's The Hobbit all over again, only with slightly darker undertones. it didn't enchant me enough to want to pick it apart, chapter by chapter. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the next and final book in the Lord of the Rings. We're going to do the Return of the Read Along, and that'll be next time. And there won't be this time a half-year delay. I will do it right away, and we will go on through the Return of the King to the end, and then we will decide what we're going to read next. Anyway, until then, thank you, Book 2.